Welcome to the Daybreak Star Radio Network. Our motto here is indigenize in the airways 24/7, 365. Thank you so much, Natasha. We've been going back and forth here on email to make this special day happen. We've been excited about this interview to really understand and allow our listeners to understand, what Northwest Indian College offers, for their current student base and for people that would like to be involved. So our first question, please, is what opportunities do you hope to present to students, President Guillory?
Well, thank you. Harris, as you were saying, the main opportunities that we want to present to our students is an opportunity for a culturally based education. I always want to acknowledge the founders of Northwest Indian College, and the founders are the Lactamish people. The Lummi Nation had a long-time dream and vision of offering an education focused on Indigenous values and ways of knowing. And that's our mission, is through education, Northwest Indian College promotes Indigenous self-determination and knowledge. And so in terms of offering opportunities for our students, we look at access to a quality higher education. And we know historically education hasn't always been kind to Indigenous people. In fact, it's been used to eradicate and remove Indigenous identity, culture, language, and history. But the strength of the tribal college movement and Northwest Indian College is we're reclaiming Indigenous education to use as a tool to restore and revitalize Indigenous identity and culture. And so that's the main initial thing that we want to focus on here at Northwest Indian College. And in terms of the type of degree programs, we offer 2-year degree programs, and we also offer bachelor's degree programs. And we can go over in maybe more detail in specific degree programs, but Indigenous education, 2-year degrees, bachelor's degrees. We also have continuing education degrees, and they're non-credit educational experiences, but it's more of a holistic, community-based and place-based education rooted in our ancestral homelands in Washington State here, and also a campus in Idaho as well.
As someone who grew up in a predominantly white area and didn't have a lot of Native influences around me growing up, it didn't have a lot of people like that. I really admire that. Thank you for doing that. So one question I do have is, what inspired you to go into education when you were growing up?
Well, thank you. I'll try to keep this brief, but as I mentioned, I'm a direct descendant of the Nez Perce tribe. I grew up on in Lapwai, Idaho, on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation, and my undergraduate was actually at Eastern Washington University. And in high school, I grew up mainly in Lapwai, but we moved over to Washington State. When I say we, my parents, my mother got a job with the Coast Salish tribes, and that was an opportunity that was my first experience with working with and meeting Coast Salish tribes. And then I graduated from high school and I went to Eastern Washington University, and then went to Washington State University for a graduate school for my master's degree at that time. And I went back home to Lapwai, and I got my first job at Northwest Indian College, the Nez Perce site. So I was the first site manager, and that was back in 2001. And it was really during that experience really changed my life in a lot of different ways. Before I also mention that, though, is what has inspired me is my parents. My mother was the first generation college graduate. She earned her bachelor's degree and then eventually earned her master's. My dad was the first generation student as well. And my dad is African American, but we grew up in Idaho, and my parents always promoted education. And working with the Nez Perce site students. We were only a 2-year degree institution at that time, but we had a lot of family community members who had stopped out at the larger mainstream institutions in the surrounding area. And so that may have been Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, or Washington State University, or University of Idaho in the area. But when they came back home, they still had a desire to earn a 2-year degree and to help to support their tribes and their families and the community. And what the difference with Northwest Indian College was the sense of culture, family, community, history, and that was very inspiring. There was a sense of enthusiasm, support, motivation, and so to see a lot of our students earn a 2-year degree, and then actually many have since moved on to earn a bachelor's degree, they really inspired me. And I also want to acknowledge my late brother, Dr. Raphael Guillory. He passed away a 1.5 years ago from cancer, but he took went one step beyond my mother. He was the first one to earn a PhD, and he was a huge inspiration to me. And so the combination of my parents, my brother, and our the students at the Nez Perce site at that time, they inspired me to pursue my PhD at Washington State University. And I studied, my dissertation topic was on Native student success. And to summarize that, is what I found was that most of the literature focused what I call on the deficit perspective. It was all of the reasons why Native students were not successful for a variety of different reasons: low academic preparation, maybe social issues in the community, lack of motivation. Again, it was just a negative deficit perspective. But I saw something different at home. I saw something different with my family. I saw something different with a tribal, indigenous-based education, where you emphasize culture, identity, sense of place, history, in indigenous context. And even if it was a small percentage, I wanted to know what works, not what didn't work. I wanted to know what works. And all those things that I mentioned, those are all a culmination of the things that inspired me to pursue a career in advancing and supporting Indigenous education. And I'm just fortunate to work here at an institution that is rooted and founded in that.
Thank you. What changes would you like to bring to Northwest Indian College here in the near future?
Well, maybe at minimum 2, if not 3 things. And number 1 is just more resources to advance our mission. Tribal colleges, Northwest Indian College, we are one of 37 tribal colleges nationwide across the Indian country. We're the only accredited tribal institution in Washington State and in Idaho and Oregon. So we have that's why we say we're Northwest Indian College. And again, we're chartered by the Lummi Nation, but we have a broad reach. But in terms of the needs of the tribal communities that we serve, we just need more resources and capacity in terms of degree programs, facilities, staffing, faculty, salaries. There's a number of different things that, again, other larger institutions, mainstream institutions, state, private institutions, they have a significantly more resources, and we're funded through the BIE, Bureau of Indian Education, through the Department of Interior. So our core funding comes from Congress. And so we respectfully but urgently remind Congress of their trust responsibility of tribal colleges in providing education to Indigenous people and to federally recognized tribes. Education is a treaty right. And so that is the first thing I would want to grow here at Northwest Indian College, just more resources to expand our mission. And the second thing is as we've grown from a 2-year to now a bachelor's degree granting institution, we have a lot more alumni. I'm pleased to say for the past 6 years, we've had over 100 students earn a credential for 6 consecutive years. And that might seem small, but to us, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Again, over 6 years ago, we reached that 100 student threshold. And then now 6 years in a row, we're pleased to say that our students are earning bachelor's AA degrees and also what we call awards of completion. And so, but with each subsequent graduating class and cohort, they're asking us to become a graduate degree granting institution to offer master's degree. And so my response is it's not a matter of if, but when. We know that eventually Northwest Indian College will become a master's degree granting institution. I want to be clear, that's not my decision. Again, that's the decision of our board and of course our community. But if that was the second thing I would like for us to really offer, and again, not just our students, but it's tribes. Everything that we do, all of our degree programs that we offer, it's designed to rebuild tribal nations. And we say rebuilding tribal nations by building people, and that's our students.
So one question I do have, because you mentioned when you were in graduate school that, you know, a lot of the things you were studying were based on like a deficit way of thinking. So when you started, you know, to study more about like what things like worked, like what were the sort of teaching styles that you learned were successful, whether it was from elders or other educators? What did you see really work?
Yeah, the teaching styles, it was a combination of what we call culturally responsive teaching styles, but it was also the content. And so we would have, of course, credentialed individuals, you know, have master's degrees to be able to teach and are qualified to teach, you know, science courses, English and math, you know, more of your traditional transferable skills and degree programs. But it was the setting, it was the context. We promote connection in relationship, or we say relationality, and so it was the different paradigm from this standpoint is there is a lot of cultural and traditional knowledge in families and in the community. And so oftentimes our students, they themselves bring a lot of family and traditional knowledge into the classroom as well. And so it's not just this qualified expert in the front of the classroom, you know, distributing or depositing knowledge to the students. No, it's the space where it's based on reciprocity and respect and relationship. So where you're more of a facilitator, and you're facilitating, of course, you have course outcomes, you have degree program outcomes, but it's that type of setting to where students are given the space and there's a level of respect. They're encouraged to explore, to learn, but also to contribute to each other and also to the instructor. And there's an emphasis on listening. And we have a conversation about listening, and just in fact, just yesterday we had a conversation about listening, the difference between hearing and listening, and so there's a space for listening, reflection, and sometimes unlearning. Sometimes we know in the public school system, our students come to Northwest Indian College, and it's oftentimes the first time they've heard a history from an Indigenous perspective, or heard it from another unique perspective. And so it's just, again, a number of those elements of, and of course, having elders and other individuals, family members, and also what we call grassroots people, or more practitioners. So we have fishermen, fisherwomen, tribal leaders, just respected elders, language speakers come in as guest speakers, and they all contribute to education. But again, you can imagine it's very powerful. And the last quick thing, I'm trying to keep my comments relatively brief, is the intergenerational learning experience at Northwest Indian College. The longer that we've been in existence, it's awesome to see literally grandparents, their children, grandchildren, either walk across stage or be in the same classroom together. And so it's an intergenerational learning experience that's very unique and powerful here at Northwest Indian College. And again, not just at the Lummi campus, but at our extended campus sites. And so it's a very rich and robust, meaningful educational experience.
And what influence would you like to see, for the immediate future, President Guillory, in terms of Indigenous communities? What influence would you like to see the Northwest Indian College have on these communities, as a whole, within the relationships that you have and, relationships that you're trying to garner as well?
That's a big question. I will just humbly say, again, succinctly, one thing I've shared with our team members, and I feel this is an opportunity to share that here. When I was promoted to this position, and I will just briefly step back, I moved here to the Lummi main campus in 2007, and I was in a dean capacity. And my predecessor, Cheryl Crazy Bull, who is a great friend and a mentor, she was a great leader. And when she had moved on to her new role, and I was asked to serve in this role by our board, that first year, going into my second year, we had some consultants come in on our campus, and we had these kind of visioning, new campus expansion, visionary type of questions. And we had consultants meeting with our students, staff, faculty, a board, and they met with me. And they asked me a similar question: is what is my influence, or what is the vision of Northwest Indian College? And I paused, and I didn't realize at that moment that I would pause. And my response was, the vision of Northwest Indian College is not my vision. The vision has always been here, the Lummi people. It's been a long vision for the 1800s, 1900s, and the vision is always about reclaiming treaty rights, our inherent rights as tribal people. And my motivation and intention, since I've been asked to serve in this role, is to embrace that vision and learn that vision and work with the community and our students and our board to advance that vision moving forward. In terms of the influence Northwest Indian College can have on tribes, and again, number one is to always keep tribal sovereignty at the forefront of our minds. We want our native students to have, as our elders have reminded us, to be proud of who they are and where they come from. And oftentimes in their educational experience, they've been exposed or taught opposite. But here at Northwest Indian College, we want our students to be proud of who they are and where they come from. And but we also want our the influence to help align with the tribes and the tribal nations that we serve, to promote Indigenous self-determination, to protect our ancestral homelands, our natural resources, our waterways, our sacred sites, the fish and the plants and the four-legged and all of our sacred homelands. We want our students to, so that translates to, we want our students to be tribal leaders, to run businesses, to be scientists, to be work in clinics, to be teachers, to earn master's degrees or doctorate degrees, and we do have increasingly more of our alumni that are earning masters or doctorates, PhDs, and are assuming leadership roles in tribal communities. We want our students to be leaders in the social services, social sciences areas, educational leaders. So that's the influence that we want, is we want Indigenous people to be in these spaces where decisions are made on behalf of tribal people and tribal nations. We want that Indigenous voice and perspective to be heard and respected.
One question I do have, it's another kind of big question, but how do you define giving back?
That's a great question. It goes back to my dissertation. As part of my research and exploration to unpack and better understand the factors, or what we call persistence factors, of what encourage and motivates Native students to be successful in education, it basically came down to a couple things. The motivation of our Native students wasn't to climb the proverbial corporate ladder. It wasn't a me-based aspiration. It was a we-based aspiration. Their motivation and desire was of earning a degree was to help their tribal people, was to positively impact and contribute to their families and communities. And so that was basically my broad definition of giving back. Is it's first and foremost a tribal value to you give back and you contribute to your family. And there's a sense of responsibility that you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're helping to advance and uplift your family and community. And part of giving back, there's also challenges with that, because there's still a lot of historical trauma. There's a lot of social issues that our tribal communities are facing. I don't want to romanticize or in any way to suggest or ignore the real challenges that are still disproportionately facing tribes and tribal communities. But again, I always go back to the purpose and role of education. Education is always about hope. And if that was a takeaway message for our students, is that we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's our responsibility. Everything that we have, the facilities that we have, to be able to even have a tribal college here at the Lummi Nation and Northwest, serving Northwest tribes, is a blessing. But somebody had to fight for that. Somebody had to fight and exercise their tribal sovereignty and treaty rights for us to have what we have today. And so part of giving back is to always being respectful of what we have, to always pay homage and honor to our elders and those who've walked on, and for us to step in and encourage ourselves to assume those same responsibilities and move that forward. And so that is a part of giving back, is to always think 7 generations ahead, but you first have to take responsibility and have the courage and belief in oneself to help have a positive impact on your current and future generations.
President Guillory, thank you. Thank you very much for chatting with us today. If we could trouble, ask so kindly, radio, we ask our guests to give us a drop, if you would be so kind, and you could introduce yourself, and just if you want to say, you're listening to the Daybreak Star Radio Network, and our motto is Indigenize in the Airways. However you'd like to word it, please.
So say that right now.
Please.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I thought you were going to ask another question. So go ahead. I haven't given a lot of radio interviews, and so I have no shame of saying, hey, I'm still learning. And so if you can repeat that, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. Just, it's President Guillory, and you're hanging out. You're hanging out on the Daybreak Star Radio Network, only radio network indigenizing the airways.
Great. This is President Justin Guillory, and I'm just hanging out with the Daybreak Star Radio Network, and delighted to support the radio program's process of indigenizing the radio airwaves.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I probably need to say that again, or maybe you can edit that out or make it more succinct.
Actually, would you mind, could you type that in the chat maybe so you could read it a little bit? And we can come back to it.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay.
Marcus is going to do that.
Thank you so much. Rachel, do you want to get started?
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. So I'm going to, my questions will mostly focus a little bit more on the Health and Wellness Center, but there were a couple of things you mentioned that I had a few follow-up questions to. So one thing, you already talked a bit about, the opposite of the deficit language and finding those things that really work for students and helping them thrive. I was wondering if you could give an example of maybe some of the things, or like just one thing at Northwest Indian College that you've done to, to promote that and to help students thrive instead of focusing on, ways that they're challenged. And then, maybe what the pie in the sky goal is for the future and what you're doing to try and get there.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Maybe one, again, a specific thing that is unique that we really emphasize here at Northwest Indian College, again, is the sense of community. We can't emphasize that enough. When you come to Northwest Indian College, you're more than a number. We want to know who you are, but it's really focused on a sense of identity, and there's a relationships, there's a culture, there's a tribe. And so we want to know who you are. And one of the unique aspects of Northwest Indian College that often surprises maybe donors or people who don't know much about us is we serve students that represent over 90 tribes. In some cases, sometimes over 100 different tribes. And so in that context, there's a hugely rich opportunity to learn about the tribal diversity across Indian country. And yes, there are some commonalities, but there's also some distinct differences as well. And that's an opportunity for learning. And so each tribe, as you know, has their own history, culture, language, maybe different dialect, different origin story or creation story. But we also know that some of our students maybe grew up in a very strong traditional culture. And on the other extreme, we have students that maybe grew up in urban areas, and they want to know, they want to reconnect. And so whether you grew up in a traditional Indigenous language speaking home, or you're from an urban area, that core common experience, Rachel, that we want our students to, number one, to feel welcome. And that means that we're delighted that they're here. And that is a sense of hospitality. And I always appreciate the Lummi Nation and Coast Salish people. That sense of hospitality is still very real and vibrant, just a sense of welcome, respect. And when in that safe environment, when you're in a safe space to where we believe in you, we want the best for you, their success, academic success is we believe it's inevitable. Why? Is because it's a part of growth and self-discovery, and you're in a supportive environment, and that's why. And this, I'm basically just regurgitating what our students say all the time. They say they love Northwest Indian College, they want to be here, and it's the relationship they have with faculty and staff, they're also empowered to achieve and to grow and reach their potential, and again, in a cultural context. And so that's what I would say that is what we do that is very empowering here at Northwest Indian College. So I hope that's my response.
I guess along those lines of, you know, what you were saying, that supporting those students and helping them, you know, just succeed through what they already have. In the press release for, with the information about the Health and Wellness Center, you described it as a culturally healing wellness center. And I was wondering if you could go a little bit more in depth into what that means to you and how it, you know, supports the overall mission of the college.
Yeah, thank you. The Health and Wellness Center, and I would just really take a step back, is the latest newer facility as part of the Northwest Indian College vision of a new campus. And again, I go back to our board of trustees and my predecessor, Cheryl Crazy Bull, who we established the new capital campaign in 2005, and has resulted in 4 phases and reaching and developing 10 new facilities. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is each of our facilities that we've fundraised for and have built is always designed to provide a new campus, science and culture, and just newer facilities for good quality instruction. And with this Health and Wellness Center, that was a missing piece. So when we wanted to focus on a facility designed to focus on health and wellness, we naturally looked at our mission, and it went beyond just a new facility. And with the different funding sources that we were looking at, before we launched out on the design of the facility and the intent of the facility, we had focus groups with students, with the community, with faculty and the board. And I hope you see that what we try to do is capture the voice of our campus community and our community overall. And it was an extension of our mission, because that was part of the original intention of Indigenous education here. It's just not to earn a degree, although that's important, but it's the type of culturally based education helps with healing, overcoming historical trauma in a larger context. And so now with the facility of a place where we can have a multi-purpose place for our community, our students, our employees to gather. And we didn't want it, it's more than just a gym. It's more than a place for just, you know, physical activity, but it's a place where we can have powwows, we can have a place for yoga, a place for walking, a place for socialization. So there's a number of different what we call coastal jams. There's a number of things that we can do in the facility itself.
Yeah, and I love that point that you made, that, you know, it's so much more than just like, oh, people can play sports or, you know, whatever. It's a place to meet and to share culture and all of that. I was wondering, how long has this project been in the works, and how soon is it going to be, you know, ready for students?
Yeah, great question. Actually, we really formalized it around 2014, where it was an intentional effort. And again, that was during the time where I was still a new president. And we were in phase 4 of our capital campaign. And again, that was, I take no credit for anything before that. I always give my credit where credit is due. And but so having taken and received the baton to move that work forward, the 2 final facilities that we've been working on is this Health and Wellness Center and a workforce education facility. So during that time, we had written a grant to the Washington State Department of Commerce Building Communities Fund. And we were absolutely delighted that this, when we received the grant of 1.75 million at that time. And so that was a big vote of confidence, as we say. It was a big motivation for us. And at that time, the building was designed and projected about 21,000 square feet. And so it was going to be significantly larger than any facility here at the campus. But in hindsight, having that early success of having that big grant was almost, I would say misleading, but it was, everything else beyond that was difficult because of the funding for bricks and mortar just dried up. And also the way that it was being interpreted as, oh, you're just building a gym. Again, we are trying to explain that to grants and funders that it's a multi-purpose facility and it's beyond a gym. It's a place that focuses on health and wellness. And one of the other important considerations with the Department of Commerce Building Communities Fund grant is with the state, it's funded on a 2-year or biennium schedule. And it needed to roll over. If we didn't fund it within that first 2 years, it automatically rolled over into the next biennium. But you needed additional requests and for it to be reauthorized for a third biennium. But the silver lining is the pandemic hit, so we got a waiver, because there was a very real worry that we have is if we can't secure the funding for this new building, then we might have to give that money back to the state. But we stayed the course and we're able to get smaller contributions along the way. And one of the important things that we did was we scaled down the building from 21,000 to about 15,600. So we made it smaller, so the footprint is smaller, but we have plans for a build out to expand beyond. But the reason why we did that is for 2 reasons: to make it more affordable, bring the price down, and just to get something on campus, and then we can continue our build out plan down the road. And so the overall cost was projected at $6 million. But the challenge as this past year during the pandemic was the inflation increased. And so we had the building priced out again, and the cost increased by 37%. So it went from a $6 million building to an $8 million building. But again, we were persistent. I give huge credit to our capital campaign team. But we were very fortunate this past year to receive significant grants through the Murdock Charitable Trust organization, and they were just a pleasure to work with. And because they listened, they heard what we were trying to do, they believed in our mission. And our initial request was $1 million. And but we also were transparent with them, saying, hey, the cost of the inflation increase has increased the overall cost of the facility. So it went up to, so we asked, and they funded us at 1.3 million, 1.333 million. And so again, we appreciate Murdock Charitable Trust. And another important funding source was the HERF, the Higher Education or the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund through the Department of Education. And again, that was part of the COVID relief funds. But initially, the Department of Education was not allowing funding for new construction, but because of nationwide advocacy with other tribal colleges and the minority serving institutions, the Department of Education allowed an opportunity for us to resubmit and to we produced our proposal, and it met the grant guidelines, and so we received a significant contribution. We're able to use those funds at 1.7 million, and then we received a huge another significant contributions through the National Endowment of the Humanities this past spring as well for 750,000. And then the Norcliffe Foundation, they gave us 150,000. And so maybe we don't have time, to go over all of the funding sources, but I want to convey to you, Rachel, and maybe to all the listeners, for a tribal college who we don't get, funds, capital, bricks and mortar funds through the state. And the funds that we do have through the federal government are very limited, even though we are always encouraged to take out a loan. But as smaller institutions, I'm very reluctant and very frugal. We can't afford to take out these loans, even though they can go out to 30 or 40 years at low interest. We just want to be able to receive funds for new facilities. And so I know that was part of a long response to your question, but I just wanted to share our journey since really 2014 to now 2022 is through the different funding sources, through different timelines, through different hoops that we had to jump through. But so we're just absolutely delighted to be able to secure all the funding, and we have since gone out to bid last week, and so we're just ecstatic, delighted, overjoyed to be able to help move this forward.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you did share that. And I mean, you kind of just said it, but how does it feel after so long of not knowing whether this was going to be able to happen, to actually, be here, and you're about to do the bid and get it actually done?
It feels, when it's actually, real, and to be able to eventually see it and, walk into it, I think it might fully hit. But as I've learned as a president, as I humbly say, is part of faith, that you have to act and move forward as if it is real. And I literally had the picture, the rendering of our facility on my next to my desktop in my office, because I always wanted that daily reminder of why through the times of discouragement or the times of applying for funding and being rejected, or they're saying no, but the why was always for our students and our community. And there's two other key points that I want to mention is, as a part of all of our new facilities that the college has built over the past 15, almost 20 years now, if you go to a mainstream institution, our sister institution, our dear friends like at Whatcom Community College or Western Washington University, again, they're great institutions, they're dear friends of ours. But you go to these institutions and you see a recreation or fitness center, a place where students gather. And I would say, why not us? Our students deserve the same experience. And so, and that goes to my next point, is recruitment. We have dorms, we have what we call Residence Life Center. We have a successful men's and women's basketball team. And so many of these students or student athletes, they're from outside of Washington State, or certainly outside of Whatcom County, but they might come from Arizona, New Mexico, Alaska, California, Montana. And so when you're here and you're away from your family and you're in the dorms, and of course in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot. And so you want a place to be active. You want a place to go and exercise. And so that's what this facility represents. It covers the 3 or 4 core dimensions of mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And so it's a place to, again, to walk, to socialize. If there's a powwow, if there's drumming, if there's singing, a gathering, there's a space for talking circles. There's a place for health. For example, if we had it built during COVID, it could have been an emergency shelter. It could have been a place for for vaccinations to happen. And so that's why we frame it as a multi-purpose health and wellness from an Indigenous holistic perspective. Is as tribal communities, we gather for all different kinds of reasons, but we lack the space. And so that's what this this building represents. And maybe if I were to distill it down to one word, is balance. Is balance. And there's an actual Lemmy word. If I were to humbly share that word, it's hath. Hath means balance. It means a life balance, and I'm saying that respectfully. What was shared with me in the college is that was the purpose of education, is for us to find a balance as tribal people, and that's what this building represents. It helped us to find balance, or to be well here moving forward.
Awesome, Justin. I really appreciate your time. One last question that I had, and then any final thoughts that you want to share. It's a little bit more general, but you mentioned that you grew up in Lapwai, and I was wondering if you had, in your time here, connected with students who grew up in the same town you did, or who, other Nez Perce tribe descendants. And if they had, talked to you about what the experience of going to NWIC meant to them.
Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. That's one of the maybe secret joys that I do have, and I can't overstate this, how humbling it is. And part of me, I even want to choke up, and I'll try not to choke up, because the Creator has been very kind to me. And for me to serve in this role, if you had asked me when I was younger, or growing up in Lapwai, what would I be one day, I would never in a million years would have said I would occupy the position I have here today. But I've been very fortunate to take each step, as each door and each path has opened up. I've just taken that courageous step to move forward, and part of that is working at the Nez Perce site, again, back at home, and seeing the joy and the motivation for our Nez Perce tribal members and community members aspire to earn a bachelor's degree or an AA degree, or have since moved on to earn master's degrees. To play a small part of that is very rewarding. Again, I'm a believer in teams, and I'm just more of a servant leader, and my desire is just to bring resources and support to advance our mission, and most of all, hope. And I want our students to have that hope that they can be successful, and in Northwest Indian College is a place for them to be successful. And so over the years, each spring, we have students graduating each year. And yes, I do see family members, or I see people that I haven't seen in a number of years. And when I see them, I'm super happy to see them. I know they're always glad to see me during that time, because it's celebrating, right? They're graduating, but just for me to see them, they help to fill my cup, or my cup is overflowed, and it's just always a reminder to keep moving forward. And so, yeah, that's my general response is that I'm just thankful to work with a great board and our faculty and staff, dedicated faculty and staff who are really making a positive difference in the lives of people. And I'm very thankful to actually see, again, family members or community members, and I don't often get to interact with them as much as I would like in this role. Again, we're doing so many different things, but at least that one time a year during graduation, to see them walk across that stage is always rewarding, and to play a small part of that is very fulfilling.
Great. Well, I don't think I have any other questions. If there's anything else you want to share, now's the time, but if not, I'll let you get back to your work.
Yeah, maybe one last comment is I always want to acknowledge my wife. My wife is a graduate of a tribal college. She graduated from Sitting Bull College. She's a member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. And I humbly say that because she's my better half, much better half. And she, again, works here at the college. And so the reason why I want to mention that is I'm fortunate to have a spouse who also has a strong tribal college roots in her experience in her family, and for us to be over here to, again, be a part of this larger tribal college movement is, again, very fulfilling. And so I always want to acknowledge my wife and our 4 children who are Standing Rock Sioux tribal members. And so, again, we're very thankful to the Lummi Nation and the Coast Salish people. The Creator has us over here since 2007, and to be a part of this good work is very humbling. And I appreciate you reaching out, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing. I was wondering, Justin, if you could just say for radio purposes, where Northwest Indian College is located and our 6 extended sites.
Oh, yeah. So the Northwest Indian College, again, is chartered by the Lummi Nation on the homelands of the Lummi people just outside of Bellingham, Washington, and our 6 extended campus sites. We have one located at Swinomish, just south of us. Port Gamble Sklallam is near the Kingston, Washington area. The Tulalip tribes that we serve is just outside of Marysville. The Muckleshoot tribe near Auburn, Washington, and the Squally just outside of the Olympia-Lacey area, and the Nez Perce tribe in Idaho. So those are our 6 extended campus sites.